Great. So really great to have you here for the last in the series on full spectrum meditation. And actually, I'll just tell you a little secret. I now consider, having taught the series, that I've missed out one element of the full spectrum. So I'm going to tell you about that right now. So the full spectrum meditation practice that I've talked about so far is awareness practice, meditation, or prayer or relational practice. So either praying or invocation or receiving a blessing from a higher power or an archetypal form, and psychological practice, which is about bringing support to vulnerable places in yourself. But the piece that I think that I've missed is that I was thinking about this today, because what I'm trying to do is to come up with a model that works across all the different religions and practices. And in Buddhism, there's a difference between what they call shamatha, which is focusing on an object to focus and calm the mind, and awareness practice, which is to observe what's arising, which they call vipassana. And I hadn't made that distinction, but recently I've been thinking about how in other religions, you might focus on a deity, an archetypal figure, and you might really have a strong visualization and create a strong feeling, or focus on an object. And so there really are two forms of, that essential practice, that essential spiritual practice. The first is focusing on an object. Or it could be a visualized object, a deity, for example. And mantra practice would be that. If you're imagining a deity, or imagining yourself as a deity, that would be shamatha. And then vipassana is when you let go of all of that and you just try to observe what is arising. And I've been slightly down on shamatha, the focus practice, only because my tradition has so much of it. I've had, there are so many visualizations, so many mantras, so many complex, things in the heart with Sanskrit characters twirling around. So, I've tended not to focus on that recently, but I just want to mention it today, because in case that's a practice that you have, and that you work with. And if that's the case, then, for people from other traditions, I think it's really a clear idea that sometimes it's really good to focus on something to still the mind, to get stillness. And once you have a really still mind, then you can just watch what arises. But if the mind is incredibly busy, you're full of thoughts from the day or a project, or, what happened an hour ago, or what's happening tomorrow, or the Christmas arrangements, or whatever it is, then actually a practice that makes you focus. And by the way, of course, seeing the image, whatever, it could be a flower. You could do that with a flower. Focus on a flower, the visual image. Is there a feeling of it? Is there any sound that goes with it? And that's the reason why, that in the East, there will be mantras, and in Christianity, there will be the use of particular words or phrases to occupy the hearing part of our brains. Because basically, we need to occupy the visual field, the auditory field, and the feeling field. I mean, that's what we want to focus. And then there isn't enough room for the babble of internal dialogue. That gets really quiet. And then when that gets really quiet, we can go directly to awareness practice itself, which is actually, let me try and think of, it's impossible, but let me try and think of nothing at all. Let me just notice what arises spontaneously. And of course, one thing that arises spontaneously is our internal dialogue. But as the thought arises, rather than to grab it and then to say, oh, that's an interesting thought, let me think about that, and you follow that, and then 10 minutes later, you've used 10 minutes of your meditation practice thinking about that thought. If possible, to let go of the addiction, to see the thought rise and say, there's a thought. Welcome, you're welcome, but I'm not going to follow you. And then then the thought just drifts off, disappears. And then probably something else comes up. And so in awareness practice, in fact, the way we teach mindfulness, actually, we do use a bit of shamatha in that, because we say, focus on your legs, focus on your body, focus on your breathing. So we keep drawing attention to the space of listening, the space of feeling, the space of seeing. Whereas the pure awareness practice is just to observe what arises. And then, as I've just to complete the story, as I've mentioned before, when one's really, really, really great at staying with the ever-changing moment of things that arise, then at some point further down the line, we relax just a little, and then there's no longer an observer, but we don't get distracted. And that's a taste of the ultimate state. Then that state is the one that one develops, because that's the non-dual state. But perhaps I shouldn't mention it so often, because a lot of Buddhist masters would never talk about it, because then we get conceptual about it. The one thing to say is that when you think that's the non-dual state, you're already in the dualistic state. You've already got an observer. You've already got the judge back. Let me just say something about why is that important? Because in that non-dual state, there is no judgment about your life. There's no judgment about your past. There's no judgment about your future. There's no longer any psychological story. That's why they call it nirvana. It's beyond the troubles of this world. It's beyond the cause and effect of this world. It's a moment of peace when your whole story of your life has evaporated into the present moment. And we get lots of, if you do meditation practice, mindfulness practice, you'll get tastes of that. And over time, you will develop confidence in that taste. And so then the third, it's really the next form, if we of meditation practice. If we have awareness practice, we have prayer. Going back to the model that I've been teaching all along: awareness practice, prayer, and psychological practice, or as I've said today, shamatha, or focusing practice, awareness practice, prayer, and psychological practice. For the final one is the psychological practice, where we invoke archetypal forms. We pray, but we also invoke psychological forms, people who love us, people who care in us, people who believed in us. Perhaps we invoke all the good moments of our personal history. We invoke all of that to support us holding a vulnerable or sensitive place in ourselves. And of course, we did that 2 weeks ago. We did psychological practice 2 weeks ago. Last week, we did an integrative practice where we practiced with the three major forms that I've been describing: awareness practice, prayer, and seeing an conversation, relationship with an archetypal form. Someone calls it having a rendezvous every day with God. That would be one way to talk about it. And the third form, the psychological form. We did all of that in a longish meditation last week. This week, we're doing the short and sweet version, which I also, in my own head, I call it the short and dirty version, where we're going to do the practice in less than 15 minutes. And you could do it in 3. And what we're going to do today is I will lead you through it, and then we will go, a short meditation practice. Then we'll go into groups, discuss the instructions, if you like. And then we'll spend 15 minutes in our group of 3, but silently practicing on our own. But we'll do that in the group of 3 because I want the conversation before and afterwards to be in the group of 3 or 4. Well, it depends how the numbers work out. And so first you'll chat, say, how did you understand the exercise instructions? 5 minutes on, making sure we've understood it. Then 15 minutes doing the meditation, which is plenty. You may not even need that, but I'll give you 15 minutes. And then between 5 and 7 minutes per person, depending whether you're in a group of 3 or 4, on how was doing it on your own, doing the whole practice. How was it for you, and what do you have to develop? And I think it's really interesting doing this in groups of 3, because so often we go and we learn meditation and we practice meditation, but actually it's fascinating to hear from other people what they do. They may, They may say something that you think, wow, I've never, ever thought of doing it that way. Maybe I'll try a bit of that. So the sharing is really a useful thing. And so that's why we're going to do that. And then we'll come back finally and do the large sharing. Let me just share with you the model that I have used for the sort of the short and sweet practice. So first, the awareness practice. And I, just paying attention to my senses. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? Really paying attention to that. Notice what's happening in awareness. Notice how attention jumps around, but behind attention is awareness itself. It's such a beautiful practice. That's a lifetime's practice, just to pay attention to the way attention jumps around and awareness is behind. And then the invitation of spiritual archetypes. So whatever archetypes you have or you want, they're available to you. That's the great, there are lots of bad things about the postmodern world, lack of faith being one of them. But a good thing about the postmodern world is that you can pray to anyone you like. And it was really sweet. One of my students on one of the courses, she had a sort of experience of a really powerful experience of a Christian saint that really changed her life. But as a result of me talking about other archetypal forms, she was doing a meditation. She also got Tara, who's the sort of the mother, the mother figure in Buddhism, who, if you cry, she's there immediately. She's like a mother who, she has the baby's cry, she's there. And so it's just such a beautiful image for me that this particular person, who I admire a lot, she's got a very beautiful spiritual practice, which is mainly Christian, has allowed a Buddhist image, archetypal form to join her. Why not have all the great archetypal forms of all the great traditions, call on them all, they're all available to you. So, I think we can give up the idea that we have to stay within a single tradition. And then, prayer, which is, just sort of saying, please help me with this, please help me with this conference I'm presenting at. Please help me be patient with my husband or my wife. Please help me with X, Y, and Z, whatever it happens to be. Please help me with my life. Or it could be, please helps, a friend of mine is dying, please bless them. It could be, on behalf of other people. Or it could be a conversation. Hey, God, what do you think about this? I think it's quite good to have informal relationships. Sometimes prayer forms can be very, very formal. Some of the Buddhist books, the first 5 pages are sort of sublime praise to the one. But I think it's also great to be able to say, hey, Jesus, hey, Buddha, hey, friend. What I found is that with great masters and great mystics, you can be really informal with them. You can say, hey, friend, and they'll be there because they're so humble. If you bumped into Jesus on the street and you said, hey, Jesus, hey, buddy, tell me about X, he would just respond perfectly kindly and warm-heartedly. So same with Buddha, same with, all the great teachers I've met have always been really informal. It's only their entourage, the church around them, that makes it all very, very formal. If you met the Pope, there's a wonderful scene in the film, The Two Popes, in which the 2 great actors, and I can't think of them right now, but their names, but they were acting together. And there's a moment when they sent out for pizza, and one of the popes, because it's this transition from, I think it's Pope John Paul to Francis, and John Paul is going to retire and has asked Pope Francis, you're the one, but I'm not sure about you. Come and talk to me. And they're eating pizza, and you can just see the way that John Paul is just waffling his pizza. It's very, very informal. So that's what those great beings are like. You don't have to be on your best behavior with them, because if they're loving, they're loving. If they're not loving, they probably shouldn't be your archetypal form. So just lean into, be informal with those archetypal forms. And so then the psychological practice, and there are just a lot of ways that you, if you want to do this quick, rather than follow a 9-step process or a 10-step process or whatever, whatever process you've learned and you've liked, there are lots of good psychological processes, as there are spiritual processes. And so, it's take the one that you like most, the one that you have most habit with, because that's the one that you'll do most easily, the one you have the biggest habit with. So I'm just offering something really simple here. So the first step for me would always be, even though I've talked to an archetypal form, a Buddha or a saint, or, a son of God, or an Old Testament prophet, or, a mother nature, an earth spirituality archetypal form, or whatever it is that that you talk to, just to check if you're doing, when you do the psychological, is my heart, my warm loving heart, present? Am I warm and loving to myself? And much of the time, I would guess that the archetypal form that you invoked in the previous step will provide that for you, will provide that loving support for you. But you can always invite your best friend to be there as well. So make sure that your warm, loving heart is open and supported. And it could be with the archetypal forms. You could get your best friends, or you could get people who really believed in you and loved you, your grandmother or your grandfather, or someone who's really cared. So there's never too many archetypal forms. There's never too many in the circle of support. So at step 2, you might have just one archetypal form that you're praying to, or talking to. But at step 3, the psychological practice, I've often talked about a circle of support, haven't I? And people like Steve Gilligan will talk about the same thing: a circle of sponsors, a circle of support. So you could have quite a few characters. Everyone who's ever loved you, everyone who's ever been your friend, everyone who's ever admired you can appear. And the more you practice this, the more spontaneously they appear. So my suggestion to you is that keep imagining that circle of support around you, so that anytime you need them, they're just there. You don't have to imagine, you don't have to spend time creating the images or the feeling. So it's seeing the image of them, feeling how it feels in your belly when that person is present. That warm feeling in your belly and your heart when someone is there who loves you. So you want to make sure that when you see, you imagine the person who loves you, that you get the feeling in your heart and your belly. And so that's really the first step. Really, in fact, I might change this a little bit. And go, let me just do this here. Let's see if I can do this. I can change it. I might just change this a fraction and just go, let me just see. Just go, great. All right. Just changing. There we are. So just creating those 3 questions really come after the first step in the process. So then, with this love that is there, with all that love and support for your warm, loving heart, you ask yourself, what hurts today, or what's vulnerable, or what feels uncomfortable, or what's slightly out of joint or out of kilter in me. You can ask that, so you pay attention to that. And then, so what does that place in that part of my body? Really great to find the place in your body. So, make it somatic. What is the place in my body that hurts or is vulnerable? Where do I feel the emotion? And what's the longing of that place today, of that part? What's my longing? It hurts. I need love. Well, the longing is to talk to somebody who loves me, or I got hurt or wounded by what somebody said. Oh, my longing is to talk to somebody who believes in me. And then what's the intention? What am I going to do about this? So it could be, one way of saying this is that what hurts is a physical place in your body. If you've used the sort of parts model type of psychology, that physical place in your body may have an age. It may be the 5-year-old or the 12-year-old. There may be some sort of, feeling about that, the child in me, or, the emotional me. And then what's the longing of that place in me? But the intention has a little bit of the adult. Intention is quite adult, isn't it? Commitment. So then it's like, what does the adult me commit to supporting happening for the emotional me or the vulnerable me? And that's the practice. Yeah, and I'm just going to put into the chat the link to, let's see if I can copy that hyperlink. Okay, copy, great, fantastic. And I'll put that into chat. Turn chat on. And so that the handout is here. That's the link. And for those of you who don't know Zoom very well, the 3 dots at the bottom of the screen, just above where you could type, if you click those 3 dots, that will save the link that you can access later. But of course, the link will be in chat throughout the call. So any questions on what it is that I've said so far? Yeah, I can't quite see the hand. So if you've waved your hand, great. Vicky, that's good. She said good. No questions from Vicky. No from Enrica. Any questions from anyone else? Go on, Lyndon. You have to unmute yourself. Go on, Lyndon.
Yeah, I'd like a bit of advice, really. I've been learning through this particular course, if you like, how to be sort of more relaxed. I've realized that I have sometimes been using some of these, if you like, techniques and methods, but in rather a kind of purposeful way, so that you kind of do body visualizations to try and sort of heal, or you bring in a group of your mentors and loved ones as you know, to go in and deal with a difficult meeting or whatever. And one of the things that I've been experiencing with this course is actually that it doesn't have to be sort of intense and purposeful like this, but can you say a little bit more about sort of how to find a middle way in talking with these different, or interacting with these different activities, so that you get the benefits on it without having to make it having an outcome, if you like. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, I sort of am, if I've got some super scary thing to do, I remember sitting in China with a hall with 3,000 people in this conference room and having to do something. And I was like scared shitless. And I was just calling them in, and being very intentional about it. But other times I just wander around doing the awareness practice meditation, just staying really present, staying present. And then other times I'm doing, sometimes I'm thinking, I have to admit that even, I'm making a joke here, but I'm not one of the, this great master who never thinks, So, and then sometimes I think, I'm thinking, actually, it's really nice here. I'm going to come be present and just enjoy the moment, and it could be the hot bath or the walk in the woods or lying on the bed or whatever it is. And then somewhere in between is a place where you can just have a feeling of, oh yeah, they're here. I like to do that a lot. I like to, one of the things that my favorite things at night is if I wake at night, just to see them there for a moment, just say, oh, they're still here, you know, mummy's still here, you know, you know, like a little kid, you know. And that's a great practice because of course, the more you practice, oh, they're still here, then when you really need them, they're easy to access, you know. In fact, one of the things that if you just practice, they're still here, they're still here, they're still here, they're still here, they're still here. One day when you've forgotten that you need them, when you're so triggered, suddenly they'll come up and grab you by the ear and say, for God's sake, Julian, feel your feet, you know, whatever, you know. It's sort of like, so you want to get to the point where so there's conscious attention and there's unconscious emerging, spontaneous emerging. And the way that you know, spontaneous emerging can happen spontaneously, but if you want to help spontaneous things happen more often, then you do conscious practice. You know, so someone said to the golfer, I can't think what his name is now, and it's attributed to several golfers anyway, you know, oh, that was a lucky shot. And he said, that wasn't luck, that was practice. You know, if you practice, then the right thing will arise spontaneously. That's what I would say. But so it's like vary it. But if you're actually in a state in your life where things are really, really tough, you might need to give some conscious attention for a while to whatever calms you down. You know, make it a habit, build a habit of whatever supports you. But the other thing is, you don't wait for the Olympics to invoke your archetypal forms. You know, it's like if you say, oh, I can't, you know, I don't need to invoke archetypal forms except when it's really bad, it's not going to work so well, is it? You know, it's like practice invoking your supporters, you know, when things aren't too tough, so that if they really are tough, it's easy. Is that helpful, Lyndon?
Yes, I think so. I think it's also a bit the opposite, which is I need to, if you like, let go of too much of the intention. It's right. The gentleness of the sort of awareness and being that is actually sometimes is a bit harder for me because I've been doing so much of the opposite.
No, it's
so
great.
Actually, you've actually quite helped by making me aware of this difference through the sort of the guiding that you've done. But I still struggle with it a bit to find a middle way, or you know, to allow things to be different for wherever I am in a particular day or moment. Yeah.
I mean, one thing to do is, one of the middle ways of the relaxing thing is just a simple practice of just noticing the magnificence, you know. So there's awareness practice, but a bridge to awareness practice is just to notice how amazing things are, you know. And some people do that in a spiritual way, you know, in praise of the trees, in praise of the sky, in praise of the sun, in praise of this, you know. You can, or, you know, in the gratitude practice, you know, you're just walking along and saying, I'm so grateful for the air, I'm so grateful for the grass, I'm so grateful for the sky. It's sort of just relaxing, just really noticing the generosity of what is. You know, so it's not even just to enjoy what is. So maybe we should give up the word practice and saying, you know, to a more level where we're just saying, am I enjoying what is? You know, this moment, am I enjoying breathing? You know, let me enjoy this breathing. Let me enjoy this interaction with you, Lyndon. Let me enjoy, you know, everybody else's faces. Let me enjoy, you know, the warmth of my body. So it's sort of like just appreciation of what is rather than trying to change anything. I think that's a great practice.
Right. You know. That's helpful. Thank you very much.
Good. I think a lot of it, you know, because it is sort of like, no, I'm going to do awareness practice, grip my face, try and relax, meditate. You know, it can be like a little bit, oh, I've got thoughts, I've got to stop my thoughts, you know. But actually just to say, here I am, I'm breathing, you know, here it is. This is, you know, the moment where there's nowhere to go. So there are phrases that have been really helpful to me are like ideas about there's nowhere to go except here. So I don't have to meditate deeply. That's going somewhere, isn't it? I can just pay attention to what is. And then that's much more, you know, that's really powerful. it's one of the problems with personal development is it can be, I'm not good enough. I'll be good enough when I can meditate deeply. I'll be okay when I can meditate deeply. I'll be okay when I can call in the archetypal forms. Whereas actually, the present moment is I'm already okay, already all right, already okay. Yeah. Well, what if every in-breath was a blessing from source? Great, Amanda, thank you, Lyndon, that was great. Thanks for stimulating me to babble on.
Thank you.
Amanda.
Your babbling might have partly at least answered what it was that I wanted to ask, which is, Matt, in your kind of 3 stages of thing, the thing you shared on your screen,
Yeah.
I really struggle with the sort of spiritual archetype bit because I'm not religious at all. And sort of, people like the Pope, I wouldn't let the Pope into my house, never mind think of them as somebody I'd want to talk to about anything important. And
watch out, there might be a knock, knock, knock on your door in a few minutes' time, and this bloke in a white robe may be there, just be careful.
As we're in a session, I won't be letting him in, whoever he is. But I just kind of struggle with that bit, and I think maybe the part of the answer might be that and I struggle with even, for me, just trying to make nature into a sentient being as opposed to what it is problematic for me.
But I think people recognize that. There are scientists. James Lovelock says that nature is a sentient being. So, but
in one sense, but not in the sense of that you would have a conversation with in the way that we're having a conversation now. But I guess the part of the answer, I guess, is that I do talk to trees because they have more useful things to say to me, I think, than
most people.
But I wasn't going to say most people, actually. Most people got lots of sensible things to say, but it's the ones in the robes I worry about. Whereas the trees, maybe that is the answer.
No, I could. One of the reasons
I talk to trees quite regularly.
One of the things. I really am aware that tremendous amount of terrible things have been done in the world by the religions, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. So there is spirituality that's come through, usually people who are not in the institutions, not in the hierarchy. And Jesus himself wasn't in the hierarchy. And I mentioned Christianity, and I mentioned that just to be broad, but I try to mention as many traditions that I know anything about. So, but I also want to be really clear that it doesn't have to be through a tradition, and it could be through the tree. Actually, I'm in the process of finding a tree on Tutankhamun, and how much of that is psychological, that my psychology will have found something, and how spiritual doesn't really matter. We're not doing a controlled study or anything, are we? It doesn't matter whether it's I will get a psychological benefit from having found a tree to talk to, or the journey of talking to all the trees on Tutankhamun. It doesn't really matter whether it's psychological or spiritual. And I do think that that imaginary figures can be just as good. Maybe they're all imaginary, that's what the Buddhists would say, So, Gandalf or Mickey Mouse or the famous 5, who did you read in your childhood? Maybe you could pray to, what's her name? Lily Longstocking or something,
Pippi Longstocking, I think.
Pippi Longstocking. Or, the cat in a cat book, or the gentle green giant who, what does he do with dreams? All of that. It's like, maybe awareness itself is source. That's what the mystics say. So that you've got, I can tell you have some awareness. You have sentience. So maybe sentience is source. So, so just invent it the way you want to invent it. But for some people, there are useful narratives from traditions that are supportive of them and help them. And for other people, there aren't. So all I'm saying is if there's a useful narrative, whether it's Pippa Longstocking, Gandalf, or one of the big religion, it's fine with me. Does that make sense, Amanda?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, much rather have a conversation with Winnie the Pooh than with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Winnie the Pooh would be great.
Winnie the Pooh is very wise. Yeah, but that's another subject.
Yeah. So no, I really agree with that. Yeah. The only thing I would say in addition to that is that there are these long traditions of people, in Buddhism, watching the nature of mind, who've become associated with, they get cultural support. A hermit gets cultural support to sit in a hedge or to sit in a hut, and from a tradition. So people will give them food if they associate themselves in some way with the tradition. So yeah, I think it's Pippa Longstocking, but I don't really know. It's some children's storybook, Lydia. So I don't know much about it. Pippi, okay. So it shows you I haven't really read my childhood storybooks properly. And I'm sure if I read that book properly, I will then have a new archetypal form, a new mentor in my my what's the word? Murmuration. What about having a murmuration of archetypal forms flying around you?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the Tibetan Buddhist practices is you have the whole sky full of beings. I love that sort of idea. Countless ones, of which most of them I don't even know the name of. It's just like the richness, generosity, possibility of the universe. Any other questions before we do the meditation? Comments or questions? Yeah, Vicky.
I think, thank you, Julian. I think all this has been extremely enriching and clarifying for me. I have two questions. As far as the architectural, the spiritual architectural, for me, it's more a sense of being or sensing more, or kind of letting myself be open to the light of the universe. And sometimes there is maybe Jesus, images of Jesus or Buddha or something like that. But it's totally unrelated to religion necessarily, but it helps me anchor. What also helps me is the kind of what I call the gray state, not the coach state from generative coaching, is this sense of imagining this place where I felt totally aligned with the world and connected to heaven and earth. And that what brings me into what I call the awareness. And even though there might be distractions, etc., that's okay. I don't get, I should be maybe, but I don't get guilty about being imperfect. I know I'm totally imperfect in meditating. Yeah. And I think it's fine. The other thing,
it's an advanced state, by the way. The beginner state is you've got to be perfect in meditation, but once you've been meditating for a very long time, you realize that you never will be, and you're relaxed with that.
And I'm perfectly fine, and I think I just be. Yeah. And the other thing, I usually don't have intentions. Okay. And I don't know why. I think there's a psychological blockage that I always had about asking for things. Okay. And I usually just thank, gratitude. I think the way I prayed since I was little was being thankful, but not asking. Beautiful. Because, the sense in my family, we were spoiled and our role was to really give. And we kind of had no right to ask. You know what I mean? Kind of. So I don't have intentions. The only time that I have intentions is when I have a challenge ahead of me. And then I said, okay, let me be, and of course, St. Francis comes back. Let me, the channel of light. You see what I mean? His prayer, St. Francis' prayer.
You have to just be aware that, I have to sort of keep wanting to say to Amanda, block your ears, because, yeah. It's fine. It's, yeah, it's great.
Okay, so, and the last thing is, and please, this is a real doubt. When you said they are here, all these people that, that have surrounded and loved me unconditionally, and they're two figures, my parents,
Yeah.
And you say they're here, but since my mother was a mystic, and one of the things that she said to me, please don't cry when I die. Ha ha ha. Of course, I cried and I was depressed for 2 years. But don't cry when I die, and because it will keep me in this realm near the world.
What's
And
the question?
yeah, what's the question? When they say they're here, they're here. When if I solicit too much, my mother, etc., is it not a way of keeping them in this kind of?
Well, no, I don't think so.
Okay, this is a
I think that's sort
misconception
of
I
like
have.
what?
It's a misconception I have.
I
Right?
think it's sort of like, there are some traditions where, you sort of say, well, if you want to stay close to your loved one, then the loved one can't go to heaven and they're staying in the room. But I personally don't subscribe to that. I can let my loved one be in heaven and have them in the room. It's not like they're going to become a ghost. Maybe if you're in a tradition, I've done there are some Tibetan Buddhist ghost practices. I've done practices in graveyards and things like that, but my sort of feeling about it all is that it's possible there is a narrative in some traditions that when a person dies, they need to know that they've died and that their spirit goes somewhere. In some traditions, and it's quite a lot of traditions that immediately after death, there's a feeling that the soul needs to know, the consciousness needs to know that they've died and go wherever it is they're meant to go within that tradition to some place. But I think once they've gone back to the non-dual or gone to, heaven or, whatever the spaces that they've gone to, if there is the they who goes there anyway, then it's once they've connected with the non-dual, then I think it's fine to invite them back. So maybe my advice would be, the minute somebody dies, don't say stay, but once they've been gone a few weeks, you can sort of say, hey, great, now that you're hanging out with the source, with God, with, wherever it is that you think they go, then you invite them back, In fact, have them with you every day of your life if that's useful for you. It's one of the great NLP techniques is actually the grief practice in NLP. And there are two parts of it. The first is, well, three parts. The first is, if your last sight of the person who died is in the emergency room, change that picture. Have an image of them when they were at peace before they died. That's the first one. The second one is, do you have them in the room or outside the room? Because if you've got them as a distant figure somewhere in the sky, maybe you'd rather have them in the room where you can chat to, so have them in the room and chat to them every day. And then the third one is, they will bless you looking for people with the qualities they have. They're not going to be jealous of you finding friends or, a partner or whatever who has the similar qualities. So you can say to yourself, what are the qualities of this person who loved me so much? And then, use visualization to find somebody like that in the future. So, maybe immediately after someone's death, not ask them to stay, but once they've been gone a while, I personally, I don't think the ghost of Gregory Bateson is sitting here and that Gregory Bateson is disturbed by it. But he's in the room with me, and he's probably in the room with a lot of other people. We have to think about it in these sorts of ways. So good. Gianrico, can we keep it brief because I'm just behind my schedule?
Very brief. With all the spiritual nutrition in this course, I want to apologize my eating nuts because I'm very cold. I got a cold, and so I need some material nutrition. Yeah. So.
Okay, great. Feel free to eat nuts. Great. Actually, it's nice. It's nice. I mean, I hadn't noticed that you're eating nuts, but it is quite surprising how often on Zoom somebody thinks if they've muted, they can talk to the person who's just come through the door and we won't notice. So it's sort of, it is good actually to mention these things, but I'm fine with you eating nuts. So I'm going to take you through a short and sweet meditation based on the outline that we did. So this is the short and sweet meditation practice. So as it's short and sweet, just pay attention to what you feel, what you hear, what you see. Bring yourself to the present moment, into your senses. And if you have a particular method that you use to bring yourself really present, then feel free to use that. And when you're ready, just invite your favorite archetypal form. See them, feel them, and hear them. And also speak to them. You may have a request. You could call this a date with your archetypal form. And just ask them for whatever blessing it is that you need today. And then just checking out this being that has toes, has legs, has a body, has viscera, guts, heart, head. That's called you. In checking yourself out, is there any support for your heart that's needed, for your warm, tender heart? Just check that your warm, tender heart is switched on with the support of your archetypal form. And if you need more support, a good friend or mentor, or your circle of support, just invoke them, invite them. Or perhaps notice that they're already present. So you've got your archetypal forms, whether it's singular or plural, your circle of support, whether it's singular or plural, whatever you need to support you. asking yourself, is there anything in me that hurts or is vulnerable or needs loving attention today? What's the longing of that place in me? And what's your commitment? What's your intention? What are you going to do about that longing today? Call someone. Take some self-nurturing action. Just be with yourself. Hold your own hand. What's your intention or your commitment? What are you going to do to support this longing in yourself, this need in yourself? And then when you're ready, reorientate to the screen, to what we're going to do next, whilst staying deeply connected within yourself. Great, so we're going to do an exercise, and here is the exercise instructions. The link that I sent you previously has these exercise instructions. So I'm going to change it actually. I'm going to make the meditation here, 10 minutes, because we actually did this in 10 minutes. But I'll give you a little bit of time at the end in case you run over. So 5 minutes in your group of 3 or 4 to clarify the exercise. 10 minutes to silently do your practice. And I'm going to ask that one of you in the group of 3 or 4 put a timer on, put a 10-minute timer on. Because if I message you in chat, it doesn't make a sound. So if one of you puts a timer on so that you in your group of 3 or 4 can hear it. And so that's just a silent private meditation. And then when you come back in the groups of 3, you've got 7 minutes per person to share how it was for you, how the meditation was, and what you want to develop. And in the groups of 4, 4 minutes per person, sharing how it was for you and what you need to develop. And you know, the exercise instructions are in the link that I've sent you already. Any questions before we go into the exercise? And just unmute and just ask the question, because I'm going to keep the screen share up. Any questions? Just unmute and speak. Otherwise, I may not know that you've. Okay, it looks like you're all clear. So we have got 41 minutes. So we'll take 41 minutes for the exercise. With the last 4 minutes will be a little bathroom break or a chat. So 45 minutes in total, of which, and I will send messages around these different timings, but I will do the group, the 5 minutes, the group of 3 to do their own timings for the 7 minutes per round, because I will do the timing for the groups of 4. So, but for that 10 minutes, put a timer on. Great. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Great to have you back.
Hi, Mark.
Great. How was it for you? How was it for you, darlings?
Okay, since I have to go, since I have my daughter arriving from Mexico, she's downstairs, and another from San Francisco. It's like the family reunion. It was wonderful, Julian, and it was wonderful to be able to participate today after, you know, kind of 4 months of silence for me. And just sharing with Maggie and Caroline, and listening to their processes, and the organic process was very, very helpful for me. And also what Caroline called your awareness of awareness, kind of meta-awareness that you give us in the structure. Great. So I have to go. Thank you, everyone, and Merry Christmas. I'm not politically correct, but happy, how do you say, happy holidays, whatever. And much love to you. Hugs.
And to you, Vicky.
Lots of kisses too. Bye-bye.
Any questions or comments from anyone? How was it for you? Let's hear from each group. Caroline.
Well, I just say that I found it really difficult.
What did you find difficult?
I found it really difficult trying to sort of follow instructions. But kind of talking, so I almost kind of couldn't do it at all and didn't even try, but didn't mind that I didn't try and didn't kind of berate myself for that. But what was really interesting was that then talking about it in the group was this thing about, at the same time, really, really recognizing the value, though, of having the instructions and knowing that they're there, and just the kind of, just the idea of, like, you know, the sort of 3 or 4 sort of separate categories in a way. And actually to have that is, in and of itself, really a kind of quite a sort of special thing, because I felt that for me to sort of utilize something like this, it's like I would want to kind of just invite it all in at once and then see how it arose. And so that's how that kind of organic thing came about, you know, because the story unfolds as it unfolds, but the awareness of the distinction between one kind of way of looking at it or being with it in another is actually really helpful as a kind of map in a sense. So that's what I got from it, even though I couldn't do it. So that's so I thought that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you.
I think it's worth saying about Caroline that that she's very experienced with sitting with non-dual arising, and so therefore therefore it'd be easier for her to follow the natural arising. But I'm glad that you included the comment that just having a map gives us distinctions that encourages other things to happen. So I think that's great.
But it's even more than that. I don't want to take up too much time, but I mean it more than that though. It's like there are elements in there that I wouldn't have recognized until you told me about them. So it's not like just in a sense of just that at all. It's much more than that and much more valuable than that.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
It reminds me of my 5 rhythms teacher, Sue Rickards. And one of the wonderful things about her is that she gives instructions in the classes, but you can actually, it's totally okay to ignore her instructions and do something else. The only thing that she doesn't want is if you're really disconnected. So, if you're making noise or you're doing physical actions that are disruptive, because actually when one's connected with oneself, you're sort of in the flow, whether you're following the instructions or not. So I just love her classes, because if she says pair up with someone and I don't want to, dance with someone, I can, as long as I'm not, as long as I'm connected with myself in that. And I think that's really a great thing for life, that instructions in these sorts of domains can be either taken or ignored. I mean, that's why Erickson was so good, because he would say, you may or may not want to close your eyes. He's making a suggestion to close your eyes, but it's a suggestion, not an instruction. So I think, these sort of, someone once told my Buddhist master, he said, oh, Julian doesn't believe blah, 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 blah. And my Buddhist master turned to her and said, I would never tell Julian what to do. I think it's really, and that's what I want in my teachers. And also I think it's what, we can make suggestions, we can give each other ideas and maps, but not to lay them too heavily, if there are, infinite possibilities, then there are infinite meditation forms and infinite processes and infinite structures and infinite ways of doing things. And that's sort of the Erickson view, which is also, you also see it in Buddhism. So, when they say 84,000 different meditation practices, they don't actually mean, 799,000, 83, 1,999 plus 1. They mean a sort of infinite number by that. What else did you get from from your small group or from the exercise? Oh, I can feel the depth, the connection. Okay, so the field is a really strong meditative field right now. And that's really welcome. Okay, Enrico.
I felt in the sharing very connected with my 3 roommates, with the other 2 roommates. And it was, my practice was, because of this cold and my leg hurts, I make it first time in your class, standing up. And it was really amazing. Everything, big thing. All the 3 steps, and at the end, I got occasionally this this frame which you this frame where you start and then you have your resource, obstacle, transformation. I had it now down, that it's laid down, and I make my meditation on this with awareness, and then in the resource, I wait what will come, which archetypal things, and it was very very spiritual, very everything. Yeah, so it's another experience. Yeah, of course, and do it not laying or not sitting, but standing, and go through this process, not so fixed, but to say, okay, now what could it be, what you say on this, what is the translation of that, what you say, what we should look to, all the 3 steps, and how can I translate it in this kind of piece, It was very beautiful. Yeah,
it's really worth mentioning that, of course, you don't have to do them in that order. They can arise in different combinations at different times, and you can go back and you can be doing the cognitive and the psychological, and then you say, oh, I need some archetypal resource, or I need to do some prayer, or now let me go back to awareness practice, or let me, you can do it in any order you want. Thank you.
Twice I go back. Yeah. Thank you. Forget to mention, twice I go back and restart, not from the beginning but in the middle. Yeah, thank you.
Lydia, did you have a question? I saw your finger waving.
Who? Me?
Lydia.
Not really. I had a headache.
Oh, I
So-
see. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
The waving finger. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else to be said? What about one of the other groups? The other group? I think there's one more, at least one more group. Okay, maybe not. So what I'd like us all to do is, actually, just before I do that, I just want to mention that the 2022 Life Talent Program is starting on the 25th of January with part 1, which is 9 weeks, followed by part 2 that is 32 weeks, with the summer term starting in April, and it goes through till July, and then we get a 6-week break, and then we start again in September. It's online. It's really powerful. It's very, very powerful doing it face to face because you've got the somatic connection with people. But online, the great thing about online is that each 3-hour chunk, each week is a 3-hour chunk. You get a tool that you then get to practice during the class and with another partner after the class. You get a whole week to integrate that chunk. So it's super powerful doing it as an online program over that amount of time. And there's a change in, for those of you who've done it before, of which I know that 2 of you here have done the whole program before. There's a really big change this year, which is that I used to do, so the first part is all your psychological resources, life vision, life calling, psychological resources, your life vision, your strengths, all of that great stuff. Then there's the healing of emotional wounds. Then there's the part about the spiritual, and then there's the part about taking it to action. And there was always a slightly difficult transition when we started talking about how do you fulfill, give your gift to the world. How do you give your gift to the world? Express your life calling on your strengths out into the world. And for some people, they needed help with the marketing plan, thinking through from the audience's point of view. And other people were more about, well, I give my gift to the world through my family and my community. So what we're doing this year, also, there's something else that's changed this year, which is that I think we need to spend more time on healing. So the first year Life Talent program is going to be on the psychological resources, all the deep healing work, and we work with core wounds. Most of the training programs that we all know about don't work with your core wounds, but Life Talent, we want to work with what's, bring healing to the most wounded place in yourself. We're going to spend more time on that, and having a generative state or a state of being in which we hold those wounded places in ourselves, both the ones that are, that are very healed, but also the ones that haven't completely healed. And we will talk about taking action in the world, but more about in our personal lives in terms of how we nourish ourselves, and to some extent around career. But there will be a level 3 in 2023, which is about make it happen in the world, where we'll do the whole thing about how do you translate a life calling into a marketing plan, you know, because life calling and strengths is about you, but at some point you have to think things through from the position of your audience. What does your audience want? How do you translate your life calling, your strengths, the gift that you have from your language to their language, and then build a brand around it? I mean, it's quite exciting because there's something that they call a love mark in marketing, which is it's a brand that someone really loves, the iPhone or the Volkswagen Beetle, or you know, stuff that you just really love. And so then the question is, how do you translate your life calling, your authentic self and your gift to the world into a love mark for other people? That will be the year 3, if you, or you know, level 3, which will be in 2023. So before we bye, Mark, everyone else, what's a word or a phrase that you leave today with? What do you take away from today? Everybody unmute.
Gratitude.
Feeling more grounded.
Connection, connected.
Okay. Lyndon, you're muted.
Feeling some more harmony around myself. Harmony.
I'm feeling a wholeness. Wholeness.
Rising up.
Vulnerable sweetness.
Vulnerable sweetness. What a beautiful combination. Heart touched. So just really, we're sort of wishing you real sweetness and heart connection over this Christmas break, and really, really staying close to yourself. You know, stay close to yourself, because then if you're nourishing your heart with love, then the other people who around you will get some of it too. You know, it's so easy to think about everybody else, but really pay attention to yourself, and then with what's left over, give some to other people. And I look forward to seeing you in January. You can heal your life in January. So that's going to be a really powerful series. Great.
I'd just like to say thank you, Julian, for this course. It's been, for me, has been really, it's been quite an eye-opener. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you very much.
Holiday time for in a
Love,
very
Sarah.
different place.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank
holidays.
you.
Bye-bye. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
New Year to you all. Lots of love.
Bye.
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 Bye. Take care.
Take care.
Have a good Christmas.
Yeah.